Hi everybody, I'm with the second episode of Drupak Drupal Geek of the Week, and I'm Azmat Shah from Drupak, a Pakistan-based Drupal firm, and just like everybody in the Drupal community, which absolutely love Drupal. I have a very special guest in this show, Josh Miller from Acro Media. I have been an avid follower of him, especially his Drupal Commerce tutorials I have always followed. So welcome to the show, Josh. Um, and the rest to you, Josh Miller.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Asmat, for inviting me. I am inspired by listening to other people's stories as well. So it's really an honor to be here. And I think you just wanted me to go through a little bit about who I am and how I got here. So I'll give you the 2-minute speech. I started out as a designer. A lot of people didn't know that. I'm an actual graphic designer, 4-year degree in graphic design, and worked at a marketing company where we had lots and lots of websites that needed to be built in the early 2000s, and did a lot of custom work and ended up falling in love with the framework and the community of Drupal about 2007. And joined Drupal.org around 2008 and went to a couple of conferences, a couple of meetups, and really just that's what I wanted to do professionally. And the company I was working at really didn't want to do that professionally. They were interested in marketing, not necessarily which platform we were using. So eventually I separated ways and looked for a company that would hire me full-time to do Drupal. Got hired by Commerce Guys about 6 years ago. 5-6 years ago. And when I got hired on there, I started working remotely, which was a completely different way of working. Up until then, I'd put 8 years into the office. So it's a little different when you see, 10 or 15 office coworkers every day to it's you and your cats in the house, and your wife is around, and you can eat lunch with your wife and that kind of thing. So that was a huge change. And I've been working from home and at Drupal companies ever since. So I'm really excited to be a part of the community, but I'm also really excited to that my professional job is really at its core sharing everything that I do as much as possible with the world for free. Customers pay us for our expertise and our ability to deliver on a deadline, but ultimately we try to share as much of that experience and work with the greater community as we can, because we get so much out of it as well.
Perfect. So if I can sum it up, you have been doing Drupal since 2007, so it's a decade of Drupal. I must congratulate you on this huge sort of achievement. So there has to be some love affair with the platform if it has gone for 10 long years. It's wonderful. And I can see a Drupal logo in your backyard also, so it is lovely as well.
Yeah, so whenever you go to like these different Drupal camps and conferences, there's usually little things you can pick up, and I like keeping them around to squeeze them while I'm talking to people.
Okay, it's always lovely to have a Drupal logo around. I personally love it too. Okay, so what roles you have had over the years in your Drupal career, and which one of them have you enjoyed the most?
That's a really interesting question, because each, there's seasons to life. That's kind of the typical phrase. There really are ups and downs, and probably the most excited I was when I got hired by Commerce Guys, because Commerce Guys was really the first company that I had worked full-time for that at its core was Drupal. And on top of that, I got hired to work directly with Ryan Szrama, which if people that are watching you aren't aware, he originally created UberCart and then kind of reinvented it and did Drupal Commerce. And so it was kind of cool to take one of these people that I had seen and heard of and kind of been a fan of, and said, I'm going to take my hobby, my interest, and make it my professional career. And now I'm working professionally with these people that I find really interesting and smart. And I would say instead of like which year is the most interesting, which part of this job is the most interesting or most exciting is this continual level of learning that I've found with the people, not only in the community, but the people that I work with in the job that I work with. So the people that I met in Commerce Guys and the people that are working at Acro Media, I'm always surrounded by people that are just smarter than me. And that tends to, I think, just raise the level of intelligence and craftsmanship that everyone can bring to projects when you're surrounded by people that are just highly qualified at what they do. Then we can all answer questions. And it's surprising, at least it was surprising to me when I started working with people that really knew what they were doing with web development. They didn't have all the answers. That was really surprising to me. I'm like, you guys should know everything, right? And it turns out, no, we're all Googling questions all the time that we have and that other people ask us. And so that's kind of, when you meet your heroes, as it were, you're a little underwhelmed. For me, it was exactly the opposite. It encouraged me to think that maybe I could achieve that level of excellence that I find in others in the community as well, through a lot of hard work. It's been 10 years. It doesn't feel like it.
Yeah. So talking of smarter people around you, so we are also privileged to have smarter people like yourself around us. Okay, my next question is, which I personally think being a Drupal developer is something different. Maybe this is my personal opinion, but I have heard it from a lot of different developers also that being a Drupal is something, a different sort of feeling. So is it really a different feeling to be a Drupal developer, or it is just, I will say, a myth?
It's interesting that you say different, because usually when you say different, you're comparing it against something else. And when you've worked in a job for 10 years, you probably lose a little perspective. But in the industry, if you're gonna program, like I've got friends who program, really good friends who program healthcare systems for hospitals, for example, and they use a proprietary platform, and they get all kinds of training and certificates, and they constantly are bouncing between jobs. To me, the difference in the industry is that I would say 90% of the jobs that are in software in general, like a huge majority of the jobs in software, are related around proprietary systems. And when you work in open source, you kind of achieve like a family status where it's not just the company you work for, but it's the community in a way. And every time I use Drupal, I'm benefiting from literally thousands of companies and tens of thousands worth of hours, and possibly tens of thousands worth of people's efforts every time I use Drupal. And so you feel like this overwhelming, I feel this overwhelming sense of love and support from like the whole world, which is really strange. Because
That's that difference which I'm talking about. Like on the other part of the planet, and you will be loving that person just because he's doing Drupal things, and this is amazing about the community.
Oh, it is. It is. In fact, just recently we've at Acro Media started hiring a lot of people, and we put up a job posting on Drupal.org, and we expected to get a lot of people in like very industrialized areas, and it turns out when you open it up to a world of potential job people that are working, you get people from all over the world. We've got somebody from I've actually got my little world clock here. We've got somebody from Wellington, New Zealand. We've got a number of people in India. Someone from Japan that I work with in the Drupal Commerce community. We've got 2 different people in Africa, one in Kenya, some obviously Belgrade, and London. A lot of people in Nicaragua for some reason. I'm not sure. There's apparently a huge Drupal community in Nicaragua that I was in Bogota, Colombia, the Drupalcon there, and there was a huge developer community there. Saw a number of companies, like 30 or 40 developers, and these companies don't even realize they're huge, and they're very international because a lot of their clients are over and around the world as well. And of course, the headquarters that I work with is in Vancouver. So I think I just listed pretty much every continent that I work with almost on a daily basis. And that's just, that's mind-blowing.
Yeah. So this clearly depicts the global nature of the community, and again, I will say a community based on love and affection between, just because of the very great software we love all.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Talking about Drupal, so to me and to many of us, it's an ecosystem involving a lot of key stakeholders, company owners, business owners, PMs, developers, designers, and a lot of stuff. So what in Drupal community and Drupal ecosystem, I should say, you like the most? What are the most striking features of Drupal which keep you abreast to Drupal? Like it is 10 years of yours in Drupal community and doing Drupal things. So what's the most striking of all things you love in the ecosystem?
Yeah, it's funny because you're mentioning all these different hats that I used to wear at one company, right? Because when you're a one-man team, you do all of it. You do the planning, you do the implementation, the design, and then you even do the support afterwards, that kind of thing. And through it all, you always have customers. And it's the customers that are coming to you because you've done something successful before. It's the neighbor that's heard that you've done a website before. And those are the people that are, I find, the most fun to work with because they don't know what Drupal is. They can't pronounce it or spell it. And it's always fun to try to explain to them, and it's a little challenging. And just in terms of, since I've worn a lot of hats over the years, because again, I'm a graphic designer who is a senior developer now. So I've kind of gone from one spectrum to the other in terms of like actually implementing the design. I get really excited about DevOps and command line work. It took me forever to learn Git, for example, and I'm really bad at it. And so it's funny that now I'm leading teams where I'm the guy who knows more about Git than pretty much anyone else. That kind of scares me, actually. Because there's more to know than I know. But in terms of the jobs and everything that are out there, it doesn't really matter what you're working on because there is a great deal of work that needs to be done. And the huge community leaders that I run into all the time are really, really good at listening to people that are excited about the technology and then asking them the question, what is it that excites you the most? And then helping them plug in directly into the community, into the issue queues, and into some work that's actually going to push Drupal forward. For example, if you're a project manager, you may not realize it, but we're really not organized on Drupal.org. We need help getting organized. We need your insight and ability to coordinate and communicate various aspects of what's happening in the community, and there's lots of opportunities to get plugged in that way. And it has nothing to do with code. You're not going to get commit credits that way. One way that I think you've probably heard my name the most is if you're Googling Drupal Commerce, you're going to find a lot of the documentation that I've written and a lot of the YouTube videos that I created over the years for Drupal Commerce. And that's my way of giving back to the community. It's not in code. It's not a module that you're going to turn on, but it hopefully is kind of a chance. It's that little carrot at the end of the line that you're fighting for, and you can't get to it, and then you find a YouTube that explains it exactly what you need to do to get there. And so that's, to me, helping connect all of the kinds of people that are part of the community to something that they can actually do and make a difference in. That's the best part. You know, there's not one single job that's really interesting.
Okay, thank you for the answer. So something I must add for designers here, if they are listening, they can be as good as Josh Miller in future if they are sort of keeping themselves well acquainted to Drupal. So they may be great Drupal developers also. So designers can be Drupalers for in
Oh
future.
yes. In fact, I don't mean to interrupt, but oh my gosh, we need designers. We so need designers. And you might be turned off by the fact that we're not very good at design. I believe there was a conference, there was a session at the last DrupalCon where I forget who, somebody said that supposedly we're engineers that are developing that are creating Drupal for developers, and really we're supposed to be people, or we're supposed to be people developing for people. And in order to create more of a human interface, I think I botched that phrase, but in order to create a more human interface, which is Drupal, we really need people who can visually think about problems and give us visual solutions. And in my graphic design days, it was an epiphany. You could see like the visible light bulb above my head when this happened. A professor gave us a project that had one font and one size of paper and one size of the font. You couldn't use a weight or anything. And he gave us a really challenging design project. And he said, you can't change any aspect. And then the next day he, graded us, and then he gave us one more aspect that we could use. Oh, you can use bold now. And then we would do that. And then the next day was, oh, you can't use bold anymore, but you can use the font size. And when you limit the size of paper and the thing that you have to work with, like the typeface, or when you limit what you think is possible in a community because we have a really challenging problem, that's when creativity explodes. That's when you can really have a creative solution. It's when you have everything in front of you, every typeface, every weight, every size of paper, and you don't really know where to start. That's when it gets really challenging. And it's those challenges that can actually breed creativity. And that's what we really need in the community, is somebody to come up with a really good idea.
Yeah, I totally agree, because these designers are the ones who propel us on and build greater things for the community. So a wonderful answer again. Uh, there might be developers from other platforms listening to us. So if I ask you, what are top 5 features of Drupal from the developers aspects, what will they be? Like the ones you think make Drupal one of the powerful platforms around. So if they are doing custom PHP development or doing certain frameworks, or from other proprietary platforms they are using. So what top 5 features of Drupal you will present to them that they are great?
Wow, that's going to be really challenging. Let's acknowledge the elephant in the room, which is there is, and I'm not meaning the PHP elephant. And if you didn't know that, the PHP mascot is an elephant. The elephant in the room is the Drupal 8 to Drupal 7 discussion. So I'm going to focus on Drupal 8 for my 5. Drupal 8, number 5. Reason to go with Drupal 8 over another platform would be that we are no longer an island. Drupal 8 has been almost 100% rebuilt on a new system called Symfony. And Symfony is a PHP library that's completely agnostic. It's just a framework. And the same reason you would use Symfony is why you would use Drupal in a lot of ways, because both systems have solved all of the really, really hard problems. And really hard problems are as simple as, how do you get somebody to upload a file onto the interface, or as hard as taking a URL that's fancy and making sure that gets to the right function to output the right kind of structured data, and that structured data gets rendered in a way that person is expecting or asking for. And honestly, that's number 5. Number 4 is learning Drupal 8 is going to challenge you in a way that some other frameworks wouldn't. Take, for example, WordPress. WordPress is still on its latest version, allowing PHP through every file. And that it basically provides the easiest way for themers and developers as well to put the logic in all kinds of places. And you want to try to separate your logic from your controllers. You want to separate your controllers from your views and your views from your data structure. You want to try to decouple as much as possible. And a lot of the frameworks that are out there, like Ruby and Cake PHP, a lot of these are really built on this idea of separation. And Drupal has embraced that separation, but it also has, I think it's, 14 years of development experience in solving all these other problems. So now we're standing, and we'll make this number 3, we have experience in Drupal, a lot of experience. There are people in the community that are still very active, that have been here since 2005, 2006. And that's a long time. That's a long time. And they're around to help people like you guys who are new to Drupal. And that's super exciting, because that's a ton of experience that they can help you solve problems that aren't Drupal related at all. They're client related, they're project related. And you're going to find that in any industry, but what you're not going to find in any other industry is that experience and a mechanism for that experience to be shared with you. You might go into Microsoft thinking that Microsoft's been around for 20 plus years, so there's a lot of experience, but you're not going to find the kind of community like we have in Drupal, where the top tier developers are top tier not because they're really, really good at what they do, but because they're really good at sharing what they do. And it's a very different world. Number two is it's fun.
That's a wonderful one.
Because there's something about locating a solution in Drupal and then sharing it with others. But there's also something fantastic. The number of times I've been on Stack Exchange and found an answer to a problem almost verbatim, word for word, the way I typed it, is pretty incredible. And for a developer, that's huge, knowing that there's a large community that is literally having fun with programming. It's infectious, it's exciting, and it keeps you coming back literally for 10 years for that next high. I mean, I was just working on it yesterday and solved a problem, and I won't even go into the technical details. It was just, I got that high. Once I got it and I committed it, I was so excited. And I'm sure other people get that in other frameworks, but there's something about Drupal that it just keeps happening year after year after year. And really, number one, I would say, is adaptability. It's the adaptive nature of Drupal that will bring developers to the table every single time. We don't have a data model that is really, really structured. The word in the industry is opinionated. If you have a very opinionated model, I'm going to talk Drupal Commerce for a second. If you have like a really big competitor to Drupal Commerce is Shopify. At least a lot of people think it's a competitor. Shopify takes this idea of selling physical products to a specific audience and makes it really, really easy. And that's great. If you need to sell a couple t-shirts, don't use Drupal Commerce. It's not a competitor. Shopify just does it better because it's very opinionated. But what makes Drupal amazing is that you can do something like Drupal Commerce, which is extremely decoupled from most opinions, which means literally anything that you need to do for your e-commerce situation is likely possible. And really, as a lot of our commerce, a lot of our way of buying things and selling things evolves, we're going to get away from this simple idea of selling physical products to a much more complicated idea of selling digital experiences. and access and coupling all of that with maybe a membership and a couple of physical items that are over here that need to be shipped and fulfilled. And all of these ideas are great, but Shopify is never going to do that because they have a one single idea of what it is that e-commerce is. Etsy's the same way. Most of these software as a service ideas are very, very successful because they're very opinionated. And Drupal's very successful. Number one reason for developers is because it is not opinionated. We don't have an opinion on how you want to do things. We simply build tools that work together. Instead of building an awesome blog module, we have in the community views that will take a list of any content, whatever it is, and give you the ability to take all the fields and everything and put them any way you want in any combination that you want, and then you can call that your blog. So instead of going really high level, we go relatively low level so that you have this experience across the board, but without a lot of opinions.
Wonderful answer, and this is my personal experience as well. Being a developer, Drupal lets you do things which a developer normally does in his a 9-to-5 job. So a lot of things which you will be doing in Drupal will be very, very natural to a developer, and every minute of it will be enjoyed by a developer. Even I have seen developers say "wow" when they say things which they normally code, and Drupal has done that for them. So it's an honor, and it's a very great blessing to be a Drupaler, in my point. Okay. I have Drupal memories. Every Drupal developer has got Drupal memories. You must have had made a lot of website, developed a lot of website, played a part in some of them. So which one, what is your best Drupal memory, I will say, and which always comes in your mind and you say, oh, that was something great I did in Drupal?
I've been thinking, because you gave me a list of questions, this was in it. I've been thinking about this since you sent it last week, and it's really hard. Over 10 years is a lot, and there's a couple of examples that come to mind, and they're not all that exciting from a standpoint of how you build them. They were just exciting for me in terms of like it was a watermark. I was able to do that, and one example was the very first website that I built that was over $50,000, which is a small budget in today's terms of a website, but it was a huge project. It was probably 8 years ago. It was built on Drupal. It was for a community website, and it was just content. There was a lot of content, and it was just a really massive build, and it felt like a lot of pressure, and it took 6 months, but it launched and it lived for years on, and that was really awesome to be a part of that. Something that was kind of more technically challenging was one website where I built a system where it would connect to 3 different databases and would use those databases content to list things. And of course, I built a couple of module settings pages where you could change the way those databases were cached. So I had to learn caching. And it's really cool to see a single website running that required multiple databases and caching levels and a lot of those other things. Another really cool time period or project that I worked on had a bunch of developers. And it wasn't exactly that we were building a really complicated system, though it was complicated in terms of how they wanted to handle like their product catalog. They wanted to, and this, I've still not seen a Drupal site that does this. Ultimately, the project was canceled. But we had 15 developers. We were working on it, and what they wanted was a catalog that you could literally upload and preview over 10,000 products at a time on a website for key stakeholders, and then when you were ready, publish it as a single thing, and it would, when that got published, it would essentially unpublish the last season's worth of products. And so it would be kind of a change of guard, as it were, in terms of content. And that was a very, very challenging idea. And it's something that we don't even think about it, but if you receive catalogs in Pakistan, then you've probably seen it before, where there's a fall collection or a spring collection. And they just replace all of their products very quickly. Easy to do physically, very hard to do digitally.
Yeah. Okay, so my next question was also sort of related to this one, but it will be now an easier one for you to answer. Maybe it is not a very overwhelming sort of comment I am making, but generally Drupal developers think that they can be able to build the most powerful of websites easily. Like there is a feeling behind that if you are a Drupal developer, you can build literally any sort of websites. May they be very, very powerful too, very, very complex. So is it this self-proclaimed claim which Drupal developers do, or there is something behind this?
It's a dangerous thing, right? Because yeah, you actually are handed the keys to every time you install a Drupal 7 site or a Drupal 8 site, you can go and find all these massive multi-million-dollar installs that have been talked about, and they're using the same interface that you're using to build it. And at the very base level of Drupal is PHP. So if you understand the Drupal API, literally anything is possible. But there's with much power comes great responsibility. Actually, no, with a lot of power comes a lot of complexity and challenge. And it's really easy, kind of to use the buffet analogy. It's really easy to stack your plate so high that you're never going to be able to eat it all. And in terms of a website idea, the power, the actual power that you have is going to be in how simple can you make your idea? How easy can you make it to build? Especially if a client comes to you or a customer comes to you and explains that they want some really complicated system. If you can help them distill it down into 3 or 4 different kinds of entity types that have relationships and a couple of views, and build that for them, just a really small version of what they really wanted, and build that for them in a couple of days, how much more valuable and powerful is that than having a tool where you could build out every single detail over the course of 5 years? What you need to do is start thinking about your projects like an entrepreneur, and you need to be able to say, I don't have unlimited budget to make this the most amazing, powerful thing ever, but I do have an almost unlimited flexible tool at my disposal. How do I use its qualities and APIs and the systems that I understand, like views, like entities, like fields, and some of the other modules that are built up around it, like the various workflow modules for really big, like I think it's called Workbench for Drupal 7, and now it's in Core. The ability to have multiple states of your content, the media module that allows you to do lots of really great media uploads and management, the commerce module that lets you sell almost anything using any payment gateway that's out there. All of these things, you just have to know what's available and then distill that idea until you've got a single 1 or 2 things, and then the simpler you can make it, the more powerful that idea is, and the more powerful is the tool that's in your hands. You know, it's funny because I come from a long lineage of miller men who work with their hands, and my grandfather was a prolific wood craftsman. My father built houses when he was in his 20s and worked on roofs and housing additions for the rest of his life. Did electricity and all this other stuff, and here I am sitting in front of a computer all day. But in a similar way, all of us are doing similar things. I'm just building with digital building blocks, and we all use the same kind of ideas and thinking. You know, you could build this really complicated Rube Goldberg-esque machine, or you could just use a simple latch. And if you use a simple latch, maybe it's a little bit easier to maintain. And that's true for websites, and it's true for physical things like building buildings and that kind of thing. So,
perfect, great answer again. And again, I have to add to quoting one of your points about Drupal, that it is fun too. So fun coupled with power, it's like sky is the limit then.
yeah, the sky is the limit. As long as you have.
Okay. Okay. Drupal is known to be to have events also known as Drupal camps and Drupal cons, and how good they are, and how many of them have you been to, and how it's a feeling when you are in a Drupal con or Drupal camp?
That's a really good question. So I think the reason I am sitting in front of you today, having 10 years of Drupal experience, it comes down, I think, for like a lot of things in my life, big decisions. My wife pokes and prods me a lot, and one of the first things I did was I located. First of all, I was trying to learn about Drupal. I was just desperate, and this was 2007, and I was trying to buy books and look at videos, and some sort of searching, it found a listing of Drupal meetups that were happening locally. And I was like, wait a second, there's people around me that know what Drupal is? And that was kind of mind-blowing. And so I did a search, and sure enough, there was a meetup like 2 weeks after that search in a larger city. It was about an hour away. And it would have taken me, 2 hours just to drive there and back, plus the 2 hours of meet time. And I mentioned it to my wife kind of in passing, like, oh, I can't believe these nerds, they meet once a month and talk about Drupal. And she's like, oh, really? Where is it? And I'm like, Indianapolis. And because I lived a little ways from Indianapolis at the time. And she said, you should go. And I'm like, really? You think so? Like, I was nervous. It felt weird. And I went to this Drupal meetup. And at that Drupal meetup, I met Doug Van, who's still in the community. And he was kind of coordinating a local area camp. And he wasn't ready yet to have it, but eventually he did. It was about 2 years later. But he mentioned during this meetup, where there was free pizza, by the way, which free pizza, come on. And they were teaching you how to use Git, which was really, really cool because I didn't know anything. I didn't even really know what command line was at the time. So I learned from my peers that were nearby, and they told me that there was a Drupal con, a Drupal conference that you can actually go to for a week and spend all week doing this. And my mind was just completely blown away. I was like, there's a whole conference about this? I didn't even know the camps existed. And so I talked my employer into sending me, and this was DrupalCon DC, and it was 2009. And that was my very first conference. And I went to my first conference. It's my first conference ever. It was also, my wife would probably want me to point out, it was the first time I was ever on a plane. Every time I've traveled, almost every time I've traveled, except for a few select like family trips, almost every time I've traveled has been because of Drupal. And it's taken me outside of my city, and it's taken me and broadened my horizons so much. But so I traveled to DC, to Washington, DC, DrupalCon, and I was just so excited, blown away, and I had so many great conversations and learned so much that honestly, that conference is why I am still in Drupal, because it started a fire that burned very bright that week, but also continues to burn year after year. And I've only missed, I think, 2 US DrupalCons since then, and have gone to every other US DrupalCon. I was allowed to go to DrupalCon Paris. The very next DrupalCon was in Paris, and the Drupal Association, I applied, and the Drupal Association paid for my ticket and my hotel room.
Wow.
to go to DrupalCon Paris, and it's little known. All of the conferences, all of them, and I think there's 3 DrupalCons a year. There are people, they try to go regional, but they don't always. They have, I think, 10 to 15 open spots where the Drupal Association will pay for you as an individual to go to the conference. And they do this for people that would not have the money or effort. I was the only international from the US developer that was sent by the Drupal Association that year to the European conference. I would have never gone. That would have been, I would have never been able to go to DrupalCon Paris, and that was mind-blowing to go to Paris just in general, but to do it because of Drupal was really, really cool. And those, if you look 2 to 3 months ahead of time before all the DrupalCons, the Drupal Association on drupal.org/planet, which you should always go to every day and read about Drupal news, the Drupal Association will announce that they're accepting applications for sponsorship, and they will send you to DrupalCon if you fill it out and you get picked. So it was just really cool. Really cool.
Let me add also, one of my childhood dreams came true by visiting India for DrupalCon Asia. So this sums it up for the question. That was lovely, and I was that was very, very generous on the part of Drupal Association then too. So I will add on to it, Drupal camps and cons, they are just fun and very, very
yes.
full of knowledge.
Yeah, and to give a quick kind of wireframe of what happens, you will show up to a conference like this, and it does cost a little bit of money, but don't be afraid if you don't have the money to ask the organizers if there's any sponsorships available. Usually camps will either just let you come for free if you're a student, or we'll have a couple of sponsorships that are available, or maybe there's a couple of sponsors who were given 5 or 6 tickets and they're only using like 3, and they'd be willing to give you one. That kind of stuff happens. Just all you have to do is ask about it. And you go there, you pick up your badge, and then usually there's a bunch of events happening every night of that camp or the conference, and you use that time. That's the most valuable time you can use in the community, is to make friendships. There are people that I have been talking to since DrupalCon Washington, D.C. in 2009 that I have seen at every camp since then. So for like 8 years, I've been running into the same coworkers. That's our big family members, right? And getting to know them and knowing that I can find them on Twitter or send them a quick email and get a really smart response. That's invaluable, and that's actually why people like Acro Media, companies like Acro Media and Lullabot and Fort Kitchens, all of these companies want to hire Drupal professionals that have been around for 5 or 6 years, because we've been to enough conferences to know a lot of the people and to get information flowing where it would be otherwise difficult. If you choose a specific kind of Drupal website, maybe event management, or maybe it's e-commerce, or maybe it's media, just being able to manage video and images and audio and that kind of thing. Whatever it is, if you pick a specific thing, you'll find out there's maybe 10 or 15 people that make all of that happen. And then you can find them at these conferences because they're almost always there. And you can actually have real conversations about real problems. And in 10 minutes, this exceptionally high-functioning person will be able to solve your problem that may have taken you weeks or months to do in the past. And those are the kinds of interactions that are just super exciting to have. In terms of, I believe, Azmat, you're a business owner, right? And yeah. So it's a huge opportunity for businesses to go to these conferences as well, because unlike Magento is a open source e-commerce alternative to Drupal Commerce. Magento has these integrator conferences that have like 20,000 different vendor type people showing up. Unlike Magento, unlike WordPress, where the companies are all working on proprietary we're not going to tell you how we run our business kind of thing. Most of the people working at these companies at DrupalCon and Drupal camps are more than willing to tell you how they work with customers. In fact, there's entire sessions on how the business is handled. And if you bring up one business owner to another, how do you handle budgeting? How do you handle a client who won't pay you money? How do you handle, as a project manager, how do you handle a team of 10 people that can never seem to get anything done because all they're doing is talking to each other? Those kinds of conversations would not happen in other industries, happen all the time at Drupal camps and DrupalCons. It's a very unique experience. Yeah.
It's unique. My next question may be a very good one for the newbies and students who are listening to the show. So my question is, how good is Drupal for newbies and students to adopt as career platform? And how do you see Drupal for the next 4 or 5 or 10 years? Should students risk taking Drupal as a career?
Yes. It's a very simple answer. Yeah, it's a great career because unlike most careers, there's not a huge network of open jobs that are constantly available. There's not a huge network of people that are actually excited, willing, and capable of teaching you how to do better in your job. On top of that, websites aren't going away. Not only are websites not going away, they're evolving into experiences. And that's something that Dries is pushing the Drupal community towards. Not just a Drupal website that shows you a page, but a Drupal website that manages your brand and connects with Alexa, connects with the Google Home, connects with Apple products and apps, and becomes the hub of so many more services and pieces for these companies. To me, that sounds like, having been in the industry now for, since college, it's been more like 11 and a half years. Having done this for a long time, that's where the industry is going. And that is exactly where, it's not where the puck is right now, but it is where it's going. And Drupal is heading in that direction. So it's a great career path. In terms of how hard is it? Because I think students sometimes miss the boat on this. They think that Drupal is going to be easy, for maybe because it's PHP, maybe because it's open source, maybe because it's a hobby for a lot of people. In terms of Drupal 8 especially, Drupal has kind of grown up a little bit, and it's made an impact beyond the hobbyist PHP developer. So you're not going to be able to pick up a PHP for Dummies and in a weekend start developing Drupal websites. It's no longer that easy, and that's frustrating from the perspective of somebody who, when I started, it was that easy. I could get it running pretty darn easy. With a couple of clicks and buttons. There are tools out there. There are tons of tools out there, like Pantheon. You can spin up a Drupal 8 site with literally a click. I think it's just Pantheon.io. They're a hosting company, but they give you a free development environment for a few months, so you can actually play and learn with Drupal and learn Git because that's how they interact with your file system. And to me, that's the huge draw for a student. That's my elevator pitch for a student is, if you are interested in Drupal, or if you're interested in technology, let's put it this way. If you're interested in technology, locate a technology that's something that has visual benefits, so you can actually see what you're doing, because it's really easy to kind of fall in love with being able to see the progress of your project. Choose that. But also choose a technology that's going to push you, that's going to make you learn every day of your life, because that's how you level up in business. That's how you level up in life, is by challenging yourself. And Drupal is right on the verge of being really, really easy and really, really challenging. So it has a good combination of easy wins. Like, it should be really easy to create a page through the interface, and it still is. In fact, it's getting easier every day. But also really hard, complicated solutions can be built into Drupal, and you can get to that point, right? So if you choose Drupal, you've chosen the path that has a very low barrier to entry, but also a really, really, really high ceiling. Some of the best Drupal developers can charge $200-300 an hour, and that's just a really good life. That's a good you're going to be it's financially speaking a great decision. Also, it's very decoupled from where you live and the family you live around. You can do it 8 hours a day anywhere in the world. Our company currently has, I think, 8 time zones now. 8 time zones of different people that are working every day on Drupal projects and leveling themselves up. You can start as a junior developer or an intern somewhere and work your way up to becoming a senior developer. And then there are CTO positions that are available. And really the sky is the limit with Drupal.
Wonderful. So I'm already guessing how much do you charge per hour? A question you answered
Not even
already.
close. we at Acro, I think if you come through our office, it's less than 200 an hour. We'll put it that way. Depends on what you want.
Okay, wonderful. So it's too much for. Okay, we have talked. You have talked about Drupal Commerce very briefly, but let me ask you in a broader aspect of different e-commerce platforms around. So how good is Drupal Commerce, and especially the 8th version, Drupal Commerce 2, which is based on Drupal 8, and it, if I'm not wrong, the development time of it has been 2 years now. So there, if it is something on the top of Drupal 8, so it has to be very powerful. But if you can further elaborate how Drupal Commerce can be and how what sort of applications can be built via Drupal Commerce 2. Because I personally am anxiously waiting for the release of Drupal Commerce 2 full version. I guess it is in beta 7 now.
Yeah,
so
we're gonna get a release candidate here, I think at the end of May. And as far as I understand, that's still May 31st is actually going to happen. So release candidate, which means it's stable. Yeah, so I'll talk briefly about that. Drupal Commerce 7 has, the last time I checked it was at 69,000. I'm going to pull it up really quick. Drupal Commerce has exceeded most everyone's expectations in terms of adoption for Drupal 7. And let's see, I'm looking at it right now, and it fluctuates. It's around 66,000 right now. What we're seeing right now, though, is the adoption of Drupal 8 is going to explode. And that's my personal opinion, having been here on Drupal Commerce since we had less than 20,000 sites installed. The Drupal 8 system, because I talked earlier a little bit about opinions, about how things are built. Drupal 7, it was built completely unopinionated like Drupal was. And that turned out to be a rather challenging situation. So we didn't know what your product model was. We didn't even know if you needed product pages. And Drupal 7 really didn't care if you had product pages. And they were very decoupled from each other. And that made it a very technically challenging situation. Too much in hindsight. It was too decoupled. It was too unopinionated. And so Drupal 8 was built from the ground up to still have this decoupled nature. It's completely possible to build anything with Drupal Commerce. And Drupal Commerce 8, it's actually easier to do that because we built an underlying API, and then we built pieces on top of that using the Symfony system of writing object-oriented programs. We can actually build a different kind of purchasable entity. We can do various kinds of product data models that we were unable to do in Drupal 7, but we've implemented the most reasonable opinionated solution. So that means that translates to it's actually easier to use Drupal Commerce 8 than it is to use Drupal Commerce 7. Because it's more opinionated. It has a better data model that people can use. When you go to add a product, it actually has a URL now, and that's less confusing than the way it was before. So it's just fantastically engineered in a way that I think it'll last another 5 to 10 years easily. In a similar way that Drupal 8 is going to just constantly have these minor upgrades and eventually have a major upgrade, which is just a minor upgrade without the stuff that's decoupled. I think we're going to see Drupal Commerce follow along the same path. So the same code that we're currently building right now with Drupal 8 for any person that wants a Drupal Commerce site is pretty much going to be the same code that you're going to be using 5 years from now. So if you invest in learning Drupal Commerce now, that's something that you can basically put in your back pocket, and you're going to know how to do e-commerce, which is going to be the majority of how we sell things in the future on Drupal for pretty much the rest of your professional life. We're going to be working on some aspect of this in some way. I've never seen something with as long of a lifeline as what Drupal Commerce 8 is going to have. On top of that, we took some of the really cool ideas that we had, which was UI for everything in Drupal Commerce 7. So we used rules a lot. That is now all in code, and that makes development a lot easier. It's easier to write 10 lines of code than it was to write what those 10 lines of code meant in rules and try to explain that to people. And we actually have interfaces that can be built on top of that code. So like discounts actually have a purpose-built interface now in core called promotions. And that's huge. That's going to be so huge because that's what the customers wanted, the store owners wanted, was a nice interface for discounts. They didn't want to learn rules. And what the developers wanted was just let me write 10 lines of code to describe this discount. And okay, you can write code now. And there's maybe 10 or 15 other things like that that Drupal Commerce 8 has. For example, it has stores now. You can actually create multiple stores. And the pricing model, the product model, the shipping model, and even the checkout model, you can actually have different order types now. So you can have an order that's specifically designed for physical things and an order that's specifically designed for recurring things, and have them go through 2 different checkouts. So if your website is selling memberships, or if it's selling t-shirts, or if it's selling both, you can actually direct them through a checkout workflow that actually makes sense. Drupal 7, that was not possible, not easily. So
thank you.
There's, yeah.
We are sort of running out of time as well, and just a couple of questions we are left with. Honestly, it has been 1 hour, but I just couldn't realize how did it pass.
It went fast.
Yeah. Okay. So just a brief question about JavaScript frameworks these days, and there has been a lot of talk about decoupled Drupal, and if guys are going to learn Drupal 8, so which framework will you recommend to be learned alongside Drupal 8 for front end?
Okay, instead of giving you guys a fish and letting you eat for a day, I'm going to teach you how to fish. If you go to YouTube, look for the Drupal Association user. So just type in Drupal Association, click the user, and then there's a little search icon on their channel, and you type in JavaScript or headless, and you're going to get years and years of the smartest JavaScript headless developers that have given 1 hour, some of them are 4-hour sessions. They're all on YouTube, and they're all very, very well articulated, better than I can do in a 5-minute answer. And you can repeat this process to learn just about any topic, including commerce, including building websites or working with blocks or building a module. All of those things are right there in the Drupal Association channel, and they're all from DrupalCon, so you know they're well vetted, well articulated presentations.
Okay, one last question. We in fact don't have time for users questions, but one last questions we have all asked. I have asked all things Drupal. But tell me something about your hobbies, things which you don't do while you are doing Drupaling.
Okay. Well, I would be remiss if I didn't tell you I didn't have cats. I have 2 cats, and I have a huge love of Legos, and really I just love Legos, and it's funny because I build websites using little modular pieces, very similar to Legos, for a professional career. And the number one thing that you guys need to learn about me personally is that I'm a born again Christian, and it's the love of God and my Savior that gets me up every day. And it's one of the reasons that attracted me to Drupal to begin with. Is it's a community of people who love each other and who extend grace to one another. And that's something that my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ has given me in my heart, has changed me, and it is something that I learn and see all the time in the Drupal community. And it's a really cool, impactful thing to be able to share my faith with all of you, but also to share a love and excitement for technology, which you can be any religion and enjoy technology, you know. But yeah, so that's a very quick kind of insight into the personal life of Josh.
Yeah. So the takeaway from your last answer is that guys, if you're good doing Drupaling, you can have 2 cats also.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. In fact, I'm really honored that I interviewed you today. It was very, very knowledgeable for all of us, and I guess all of my team and my followers would have been listening to you. I thank you on behalf of them too, and it's an honor again. And hopefully, we'll be meeting someday in person too. And
I really hope so.
yeah, and if we are not meeting, I hope Google is not going to close the Google Hangouts. So hopefully, in future we will have sessions also. I'm really, really thankful again, and I guess all of those who have watched you must thank you for this 1 hour session. It was very,
Well,
very informative.
thank you very much, Asmat. I'm honored as well to have been asked. And I want to thank my company, Acro Media, who graciously said, yes, Josh, you can have an hour and a half to talk to these people. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much too.
All right.